The holidays are back at Starbucks, and there's so much to share. With classics like Caramel Brulee Latte, Peppermint Mocha, and Chestnut Praline Latte, we're celebrating everyone's flavor of festivity. Order yours in the app.
This episode is brought to you by AWS. Amazon Q Business is the generative AI assistant that can securely understand your business data, summarize results, and streamline tasks. Learn what Amazon Q Business can do for you at aws.com/learn more.
For every veteran, there is a story about a calling to serve, to fight for the freedoms of the American people. And every story has a struggle, a sacrifice, and invisible wounds. Warrior Watts programs help veterans recover from PTSD and invisible wounds through exercise, nutrition, and connecting with other veteran leaders. It is estimated that 22 veterans die each day by suicide, and another 30 veterans die each day by substance abuse. These are preventable deaths. Warrior Watt is committed to fighting PTSD through fitness, nutrition, and community. Got the privilege and opportunity to support our heroes in their time of need. Will you join us and take action?
All right. Welcome back. Fit Nation. We are a show founded by a veteran and hosted by two veterans and a military spouse. Our mission is to get people to tell their story to the world. If you're an author, share your tips with the Misfit Nation. If you're a musician or actor, our audience needs to know how they too can get into the business. Coaches, we love our coaches. Come on and share some of your tips with the Misfit Nation to help them become better versions of themselves. If you're a corporate leader or an entrepreneur, come on and share how you did it and how hard you have fought for success. If you're a veteran, first responder, or Gold Star family, we would love to have you come on and just share your story with the Misfit Nation. We always have time for you. If you're feeling down, alone, or starting to see the darkness, stop. Think about those who are around you. You are not alone. You will be missed. If you feel like your problems will be a burden to those in your inner circle or are embarrassed, dial 988. If you are a veteran, take option 1. We need you to keep pushing forward. Don't make a permanent solution to a temporary problem. If you're a new listener, welcome to the Misfit Nation. Be sure to subscribe to our show on your favorite podcast apps and also on our YouTube channel at @_Misfit Nation. Subscribe and click the bell to keep you up to date with our latest episodes and all of our news. You can also find us on Heroes Media Group and About Face Radio. Now, let's get to the show. All right. Welcome to a Monday midday show for the Misfit Nation here. It's a great day, second day of our Veterans Week shows, and we have another good one today. Our next guest is active duty Navy Commander who has served for 27 years. Her passions include helping people succeed. This one here is important to me: protecting animals, speaking up for positive change, and the professional development of the craft of public relations. As an introspective writer, she muses about the human experience for her blog, Teresa's Tapestries. She has published in several media outlets and trade press, notably the War Horse and Public Relations Society of America. So without further ado, let's welcome Theresa Carpenter, U.S. Navy Commander, Naval Podcast host, author, storyteller, wife, dog mom, and blogger. Welcome.
How you doing, Rich? Great to be on the show.
Good.
Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. It's great to actually see you. We've been talking probably for a couple months via email, but it's great to have awesome people come on my show, especially fellow podcasters, fellow people of service, and you, of course, of serving for almost 3 decades. So thank you for all you've done for our country.
Well, thank you. It's been quite an honor and quite an interesting journey along the way. So thank you.
So, if you don't mind, Teresa, I gave about 3 sentences of your bio for the audience. If you want to go back as far as you want, as far back as you want to go to how we got here, and let the Misfit Nation know a little bit more about you.
Sure. As Rich said, I'm an active duty naval officer. I've served for the last almost 30 years. I'm at 27 right now. I joined the Navy out of Columbus, Ohio. Go the Ohio State University Buckeyes. I grew up in I would say a middle class neighborhood. Went to mostly Catholic schools. Had a little bit of trauma growing up, just some issues with my mother that I had to work through a lot of my life. But I'm in a very good place now today. Enlisted at 19 to kind of get away from my hometown and just see the world and figure out what it was I was supposed to be doing with my life, and became a aviation electrician's mate. So I fixed airplanes. Then I got picked up for an officer program and I became a surface warfare officer. And then since about 2008, 2009, I've been a public affairs officer. And so it's been quite, like I said, quite the journey, navigating my way through the military and figuring out where I was supposed to be.
Wow, that is a journey there. I have a good friend who kind of similar. He was enlisted first and then became an officer and wound up in public affairs as well. He's retiring hopefully in the next month or so. And he's in the Army side of PAO.
Okay. Yeah. I've actually, it might not be, is it Chase Spears by any chance? Is it?
No, it's Chris Lancia.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Chase is an Army guy I know who's getting out real soon in public affairs. But yeah, it's a wonderful career, telling the Navy story and getting to do all the good stuff I get to do. I mean, I've been in joint commands. I've served now I serve overseas with NATO. I've served in combat zones. I've served in various exercises, worked with embassies. It's just been an incredible ride.
It's definitely awesome. From where you're sitting now, you get to see everything that's going on basically at the tip of it. From your seat right now, you can see everything that's happening that we see 2 days, 3 days later on the news here. That maybe the whole story, may be a part of it, but you get to see it all and soak that all in, and then tell the story the way people need to hear it. So that's awesome.
Yeah, it's quite the honor. It's I mean, NATO is certainly a very collaborative organization where a lot of people have to agree and be on the same page about things, and not an easy task when you're learning how to work with so many different nations and cultures, and it isn't like an exercise where you just go out and you train with your allies and your partners or whatever. It's like, no, they're in your work center and they work for you or you work for them. Like my boss is a Greek surface warfare officer from the Greek Navy. My DCOM is from France and our COM is from the UK. And then our chief of staff is actually from Spain. So it's really an interesting experience.
Yeah, so you get to meet a lot of people, of course, and we talked in the pre-show that you get 2 American holidays a year, but you also get to understand their cultures and their holidays throughout the year as well.
We do. We even have every nation has a country night. So we all go to the officers mess and we have like, let's say French night, right? Where we'll have like a French band, we'll have cheese, we'll have wine, everybody dresses up for French night. Then we have German night, then we have USA night. And these are huge events I mean, there's 500 people on our staff. So these are pretty big events that we do, and they're probably going to stand as some of the most memorable parts of my time here. Other than the trips, I get a lot of trips here too. But yeah, it's a really interesting experience, and it's so important, especially right now with what's going on with Ukraine and then now Israel. I couldn't think of a better place to be that's more relevant and gives me such an understanding of what is happening across the world, actually.
Definitely. And since you're in writing now, of course, when you were younger, I know when I was in Catholic school, writing was pushed on us a lot, but it wasn't because we wanted to; it's because a nun was telling me to. But was there a mentor in your life that showed you the way to become a writer, or you just found the love for it?
Well, when I was in sixth grade, we used to have a journal. Our sixth grade teacher, Miss Burns, made us all journal. And that was probably the first time I'd ever been recognized as a writer, as somebody that could express myself well with words. And I remember thinking that I was going to really stick with it. Like in eighth grade, they had career day, and I had a journalist from the Columbus Dispatch come and sit with me. And then in high school, I was in yearbook. So I was sort of making little inroads to those things. But then I got caught up in boys and partying and all those other things that distract us from our goals. And so I kind of lost sight of it. And that was really why I joined as a maintainer on airplanes. Because by the time I got to be about 19, it was almost like there wasn't even that dream anymore. There was just partying and wanting to get out of town and get out from under my debt. And, but it took me a little while to like kind of figure it out and go back to what it was that I was supposed to do.
Now you were doing as a maintainer. Do you ever go back and when you're covering stories and maybe on that field, do you get the urge to go in there and maybe turn a wrench or anything?
No,
No.
not at all. Not even the slightest. In fact, my husband's like, he can't believe I ever even did that kind of job. And, looking back, I mean, he's just kind of like just shocked. I mean, I do know the names of wrenches and I know like wiring diagrams and I understand like voltage, alternating current, direct current. I mean, I remember all that stuff and I did it, but I wouldn't say I was passionate about it. I would say I learned how to be what we call a final checker troubleshooter. So I was a person on the flight deck that could do the quick fixes. And I was very, very utilized for that because I was also even back then, I was a really good communicator. So they relied on me to sort of communicate what the other people were fixing and doing much better than myself at. But I was always the go-to person because people could count on me to get things done. And they knew I wasn't going to let something drop. And so, yeah, it's not something that I'm my husband, though, I very much appreciate his skills in that department.
I'm sure he says, "Come on, you know how to do this. Come on, jump in."
Well, but it's funny because when we met, he was coming over and fixing my broke down RV that I thought that I could suddenly own and not have any issues with, even though I underpaid for it and got a big piece of shit that I don't know if I can cuss on your podcast that like went nowhere and broke down on the way to Washington State. And that's actually how we met because he reached out to me. Somehow we were talking on a dating app and then he mentioned that he was handy and then my RV broke down and I wasn't going to really reach out to him. But then I remembered him saying that he knows how to fix stuff. And so I had him come over and yeah, that's kind of how everything started. So, and I just remember thinking, my God, this guy's a mechanical genius. Like he can do anything. And I remember just really appreciating it and all my things about, oh, I've got to have a guy with a master's degree and this and that. And I had all these, stupid checklists. They all went out the window when I saw how good he was at what he did.
Outstanding. I mean, that's a good love story too. So.
Yeah. I mean, it really, I went outside my type. I, like I said, I thought I needed someone that was like, all had master's degrees and had this very professional job and everything. And at the end of the day, I kind of went back to a good blue collar man who knows how to fix shit, get things done, stands up for himself, stands up for others. So, yeah.
Nice. And now he's staying he's in England with you as well, or does he stay here in the States?
Well, he kind of goes back and forth. He's technically here as a visitor because we maintain two households. So we have our household in Norfolk, Virginia, but we're also maintaining that as an Airbnb. So that's what he works on. So he manages that. And then he's here as well. And we do quite a bit of traveling. My job, I'm constantly going to Poland or everywhere, all over Europe, France. I'm going to Germany next month. And so he's very fortunate as the recipient of all these trips. He gets to come with me and go on the back end and other things. So we're kind of doing this experience together, which has been wonderful because I've been single off and on most of my adult life. And so now, or I'd say half my adult life. And so now I have this amazing partner to just kind of go through all these experiences with me. So it's nice.
That's awesome to have a teammate to go with you everywhere you can, wherever he's allowed to go with you. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. It is.
You said you've been forward deployed, of course, as a PAO, public relations officer. What's one major story that you were able to cover that really touched you when you were there?
So I'd say like my most memorable experience being a PAO was the USS Nimitz homecoming in 2018. We had gone over to, we did, the typical, what we call a Western Pacific deployment. So we went into Syria, dropped bombs in Syria. We did some of our Asia Pacific tour as well. So usually you start off in what we call 7th Fleet, and then you go over to 5th Fleet. And it was about a 9-month tour. And it was when like me and my now husband, but we were more boyfriend, girlfriend. And we only knew each other for about 4 months before I went on this deployment, but, got to know each other pretty well and stayed in touch and really talked pretty routinely while I was deployed. And I'll just never forget the way we pulled in, because it wasn't the typical way, like you pull into the pier and there's this homecoming with the band and there's all those things that you see like on TV, but instead we were behind on our schedule. And so we pulled right into the shipyard. So the shipyard is a controlled industrial area or something like that, CIA. And so there was all this like security, and we were like behind this gate, and they pulled out all the stops to make it work for us, because I don't remember if we needed to get in there right away. I think that's what the issue was, or if that was just where the only room was. But it was kind of just a sight to see the family like behind the gate. Like they weren't like right at the ship. They were like behind this like fenced in area. And then they, as soon as we were able to, get all tied up and everything, they just let everybody in. And then so you just see this massive crowd of people emerging down the pier. And I'll never forget, like, you got the media there. You have the first kiss. I mean, and the people, they faked it up and like did the whole lean back thing. It was really cool. And they had, a first mom, or I don't know. There were all these different, my XO was very creative with all the different things that executive officer, all the things he wanted to announce. And I thought this was like this really huge deal. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe that, my husband Harry's going to see this. And my husband, I mean, if you've ever met him, he's got a beard down to here. He's very calm. He's not necessarily the most expressive person. And he was just like, hey, babe, how you doing? And I was just like, this is like the biggest deal ever. Like everybody thinks this homecoming is so cool. And my husband just like, oh, it's so good to see you. And he's just quiet and just like nothing. And I just remember like, wow, that's Harry. So it was really kind of funny.
Well, we get some dinner.
Yeah, he was just like, oh, okay. And I was like, babe, look, there's the reporters. There's the, there's the first kiss people. And he's like, oh yeah, that's kind of cool. It just didn't faze him. It doesn't like my job doesn't faze him. It just reminds me of like there's that girl in the Olympics that got like the 2nd place or the 3rd place, and there's this look on her face, and it's called the not impressed look. And then I remember people like used her meme. They'd have like her like little like grumpy look, and they'd show her in like the Taj Mahal or like somewhere else, and she's just like, not impressed. I remember thinking like, that's Harry.
Actually, just seen that meme again this morning. I forget what it was on, but I seen her picture. Megan Mulvaney or something, I think her name was.
Yeah. And she got like 2nd place in the Olympics or something. And she just has this like sourpuss look on her face. Like, oh my God, I only got 2nd place. No, I should have first.
My world's over. At the top stage, in 2nd place.
Right. Yes.
Most people would kill for that. Yes.
Right, right. And it was just a bad PR move on her end. I mean, I get it. She was probably disappointed, but at the same time, unfortunately, she just became a meme from that day forward for that. But I remember it just made me laugh so hard when I saw it. And so that's what my husband's expression reminded me of. Like, this is this big grand thing that, and he doesn't have any he doesn't have friends in the military. He's never been around military. This wasn't like something he'd ever seen before. But for him, it was just like, oh, okay. Okay. And I remember
Oh,
like, wow.
she came home now. Like, we can be together again.
Right, right. She's here. I'm happy to see her.
All right, let's go. You got your bag?
Yeah, yeah. It's time for dinner now. Yep.
So
Yeah,
that
it
was
was
just
funny.
2018, right? So that was a couple years before the pandemic swept the world. And then in the pandemic, you started your podcast, Stories of Service, so about 3 years in April would be. So April 2020, you started that.
Hmm.
What inspired you to start that? And I know you're having fun with it, but I'll let you talk about it.
Um, so when I started the show, I had been getting, I'd say, a lot of positive feedback through my LinkedIn posts at that point. I'd been asked to be a co-author for a book, and it was just sort of an extension of those things because at some point I was like, well, I can share my story all day long, but I really want to get the stories of other people and I really want to hear other people's perspectives. And so my show really was just born out of my innate curiosity about people and about how people do what they do, what inspires people to take the things on that they take on. And it was a way for me to have this creative outlet where I could be more daring and I could take more risks than I can ever do in my professional life. I can talk about things on my show that I could never talk about at work or with my or with because everything I do for the Navy or for NATO is so tightly controlled and centralized in terms of messaging and things like that. But with my show, I could take on the topics that I always really wanted to talk about and that I felt were important. And then I could also honor and give a gift to somebody else and say, well, this is your opportunity to tell your story and the things that you have learned and how those things have helped others. And so for me, it was sort of a labor of love. And it was born out of this curiosity and this need to want to n- be inspired by others. And then the people that inspire me, I thought could inspire other people as well.
That's awesome. And when I first started this, it was kind of twofold. One, so we keep our brothers and sisters with us. So if they tell their story to get the pressure off their chest and get that PTSD kind of unleashed on them for a little while, so they stay with us a little longer and don't become part of the statistics that run most nonprofits, 20 to 44 a day, depending on who you talk to. And then it would also help me to know that I was helping them and learn their stories. Then after a few episodes, they were like, "Hey, that's awesome. We love talking, but we need help with other things." I said, "Okay, like what? How do we write a book? How do we get and start a business? How do we do this? How do we get to Hollywood?" That's right. Challenge accepted. So I started getting experts in and mixed them in with those stories. And now 300 plus episodes later, it's just constantly getting new people on to talk about awesome things.
Yeah, you learn so much too with your guests.
Yeah.
Like I mean, recently I had a guy on who started a micronation, the micronation of Slow Jamistan, where we play slow jams all day long and no Crocs allowed. I mean, it's the best thing ever. And this guy literally has a slow jam radio station that he's had since he was 16. He's now, I think, at
Wow.
my age, in his 40s, maybe late 40s. Went to every country and decided after visiting every country around the world, he was going to start his own nation. And he's got all, I mean, and it's gone viral. Like if you Google Slow
Wow.
Jamistan, you can find the Porter Patrol, which is his little patrol vehicle. He actually bought 19 acres of land near Palm Springs and he put up a
Oh,
sign
wow.
and he has events but I would never have talked to somebody like that if
Right.
I didn't have a show.
That's amazing. I spoke to a man who
lives on a boat that just sails between the Gulf, the east coast of Florida, back into the Gulf, all the way to like Panama and stuff like that. And he surfs wherever he can find surf, and then he just writes songs on his boat. And I interviewed him on his boat, so this is amazing.
That's so cool. I mean, people
Yeah.
just do really, really amazing things. And it's wonderful to have a place where you can gather these stories and other people can be inspired by them. I mean, it's so much fun. It's a lot of work, but it's so much fun.
But like you said, you learn so much, and your eyes get open to so many different things that are out there. You might have thought it was there, but you didn't really think it was real, and then all of a sudden it is real. I was, wow, okay, so that's awesome. So I'm not only other, also learning a lot along the way.
Oh yeah, the show is just as much for me as it is for my guests or my audience. I mean, because every time I do a show, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. I had no idea that there was somebody who was doing something like this. Or a lot of times it's if there's something that I feel, especially within the military community, that I think needs fixed or I think we need to take a harder look at. I'm not afraid to talk about those things. And I get a lot of people who question me about how did I get permission to talk about the things that I do? And I've actually even written a whole article about it that I'm looking to try to get published somewhere about all the lessons learned that I've had on speaking out and speaking up for change, because there is a way to do it on active duty. And I wish more people would do it.
You see a lot more now, like on Instagram and TikTok. A lot of people are on there actually showing what they do in the military, and I think that's kind of a recruiting tool, doing it the positive way. If they're doing things the positive way, it's a good recruiting tool. And then there's, of course, there's some stuff that shouldn't be on there, but those who are showing that they can be a professional during the day and still have a life at night and be a family person or run a business at night as well are showing you that it's possible to do two things at once: be in the military, serve your country, while also serving your future.
Absolutely. And the younger generation, I think, has it nailed with like the Instagram and the TikTok and all those things. I think that among my generation, there's still a lot of reluctance to put yourself out there like that. And I think it's kind of a shame. And I agree, not everyone's an advocate either. I mean, I'm definitely more along the advocacy lines, which is not as business friendly as I would say some of the other people's content is. But that's just the track that makes me feel most inspired is to call things out. And I try to balance it too and not be always about fixing things and speaking up, because you can only do so many of those shows. So I balance them too with just people who are positive and talking about leadership or talking about, I had it on, oh God, I had a bobsledder, a USA bobsledder on from the Marine Corps. She was amazing, Riley. So I just mix it up as much as I can. And I find that that's also the secret to success, is that you don't have to have just one kind of person on your show. You really can have variety.
And I think variety keeps it going instead of like, there's a lot of big shows that keep the same kind of flow with them all the time. And it gets boring sometimes if you go on there and just hear the same story basically with a different name.
Yep.
I like to hear stories of, I like resilient stories, yeah, but I like to hear why they wound up in that situation from a different perspective than the same over and over.
Oh, me too. And that's why I love, like you mentioned before the call, Joe Rogan, because he brings on so many different types of people. I've become a pretty big fan of the Diary of a CEO guy. He does a lot of good podcasts. He's from the UK, and he's another one of those ones that does like a lot of the, big names. But then I even like people like, and this isn't really a podcast, but there's a show called Soft White Underbelly. I absolutely love it. It's a YouTube channel where he's really a photographer that is now independently wealthy and able to interview people on Skid Row and people that live very alternative and very different type of lifestyles, pimps, a lot of addicts. But it's a fascinating look into parts of our society that people I think would rather not shine a light on. And I think it's wonderful that he's giving these people this opportunity to share their story. And it's fascinating. I mean, every time I watch it, my heart breaks for these people. But at the same time, I think that it's so important that we see that this is a part of our community. It's a part of our world, and I think it's important to have those stories told.
And closing your eyes to it doesn't make it go away. So letting it be known that it's out there and these are real people that maybe made one mistake that cost them this, or a 30-second decision caused all this to happen to them. We don't know what their story is until you talk to them.
Yeah, and a lot of it is years of sustained trauma. It's complex trauma. It's people who have, unfortunately, we're not really given a very good start to life, and it messes with your brain. It messes with your personality. I mean, I can even tell that in my own family that it's just unfortunately when you've kind of gone down a certain road for so many years, and it's incredibly hard. And most of the people that he interviews will never break that cycle, but I think that it really gives us an awareness and a compassion for these kinds of people and the things that they've been through. And so it has opened my eyes in a way that I'm forever changed because of his show. I mean, and that's saying a lot. It's just, but I keep watching it and I keep tuning in, and I feel like everybody's story I learn a little something from.
Right. And if you don't learn from them, then something's wrong up here. But you got to learn something from people's stories, and you can see maybe how you could have been there for them if you knew the person before, if you've seen the sign or something. But a lot of our brothers and sisters wind up out there too after they get out of the military, because whatever is going on happens, they wind up there, and then they're back into another fight to get back into a good life. I've interviewed a few former service members that wound up homeless, wound up in the Skid Row areas of their towns, and had to fight the demons to get out of it and become successful again.
It's hard. It really is. I mean, and I can tell you a lot of this. What was really fascinating to me about it, Rich, is that a lot of the things that these people struggle with at the end of the day is just plain loneliness. They just don't have anyone there for them. They do not have friends. And I can tell you that even as I've been an active duty member in the military and I had a good paycheck coming in, I know what that's like. I know what it's like to wake up every morning and not have someone to call, and go weeks like that, and really just have like anonymous groups that I could turn to. And so when some of the people in the shares, or like whatever you want to call it, during the show talk, I can relate. Even though I was never, homeless on Skid Row, I don't think I've ever had the addiction issues to the extent that some of those guests have. I know what it's like not to have anyone, and to be alone. I mean, I was alone in my own childhood home a lot of times. And I know how that feels, to think that every day you're just waking up and there's nobody to call, because you're so miserable and pathetic in that state. Nobody really wants to deal with you, because all you are going to be is a taker, because you're in such a shitty place in life. And so I guess I have a lot of compassion for people who are in that muck. And I have found the only way that you really get out of it is to find, and this is not going to sound like the right answer, but it worked for me. You have to find somebody who's in the muck with you. You have to find people who are just as down and out as you are, but that want to get better. That's why the anonymous groups are really helpful, because nobody else will listen to your sob story when you're in that sad, pathetic place, because you've taken so much from people at that point, and you're not in a position to help anyone. And unfortunately, that's where a lot of those people that's where you get when you're like that. And I know this because, again, I've spent months in those places. I was, always had a happy face at work, and, nobody really knew what was going on behind the scenes, but behind the scenes, I had nobody to talk to or no one to call. And, it was a really tough place. So I guess I have a lot of compassion for people that get to those places.
Right. And like you said, if you don't get into the muck with people or have them in the same fight that you're in, it's hard to kind of get into that level or understand what their tribe, what tribe they need, where they need to go from there.
Mm-hmm. Because I mean, the thing too is, especially if you're alone and you're in your 30s or your 40s, your friends aren't single anymore. They all have family and they all have other lives. and they're happy. Like, they're not in that state of mindset that you're in. Like, the way I felt, like it was me against the world. And and I had this thing in my brain where, and I still have to stop myself from doing it sometimes, where I just want to go to the most, negative intentions, or I want to go to the most darkest place. And I have to remember, like, that's a choice. I'm choosing to think those bad things, and instead I can have, try to have more of a noble intent about things. But that takes a lot of discipline, to discipline your mind that way, if for years you've been thinking in a different way. And so I think that's what happens to people when they become suicidal, or they become depressed, or they have all those issues, is that they spend days and weeks, and then it becomes months of just not really feeling like there's anything to look forward to each day. And that's how I felt. So I think that that's probably the best thing you can do when you're in that state, is find other people that are in that state as well. And I know that people won't tell you that. Like, they'll say, oh no, you got to call a friend that's really, no, because those people don't get it, and they're not going to really take time for you. No, you got to find some people that are also struggling. And then hopefully you two can hopefully not bring each other down, but hopefully you can find the right kinds of people that are both trying to build each other up.
Try to find the stairway back up is the best way to find it.
Yeah.
And another
Yeah.
thing for those in the military, when you leave home, we do when we're young, to join the military, you're leaving that direct link back to the friends and family. And now you found a whole new friends and family that people don't understand, that becomes your family. And that has to be tight too. And then every 2 or 3 years in the military, you wind up with a new family because you PCS somewhere, or people get out of the military. So you're finding new ways to be with people. And the best thing, the best part of social media is being able to stay connected with all those people now. Early on in my career, there was no social media. So a lot of people from early in my career, it's hard to find them now.
I can relate to that. Yeah, you're right. That's such a great point. My early career too, I have very few people, maybe on Facebook is about it, who are still around or still in touch with me from my enlisted days, because we didn't have social media, my early naval career, or, junior enlisted. And then about the time I was, I'd say a lieutenant in the Navy, that, Lieutenant JG, 2010, I can remember, was when social media really blew up. But before then, you're right. I've lost touch with a lot of the people, and people from my childhood too. I mean, sometimes they'll randomly reach out on Facebook, which is always kind of interesting and fun. But I was a pretty unhappy kid growing up. And so it's really hard to kind of go back to some of that. I mean, I had happy times, don't get me wrong, and I had some great friends, but I spent a lot of time feeling sorry for myself and kind of being lonely. And so it's very interesting, because I'm so happy now, and I've had a lot of therapy, and I've done a lot of work on myself. And so it's just I know I'm the same person. I just don't feel the same,
Right. We all evolve, and
Mhm.
sometimes our friends from our past do not. And I have friends that still talk about back in the day all the time. It's always about high school and this and this. It's been 30 years since high school, 25 years, whatever, but it's a long time since high school. I don't remember a lot of high school. I remember a lot of the military.
Yeah. I know. That's how I feel too. I mean, the military's basically been well, I've joined when I was 19, and it's been my entire adult life. It would be strange to go back to Columbus. I've thought about it. Like, what would it be like to live in Columbus, Ohio again? I mean, I have still some friends there and some people that I know, but I it's just not even my life anymore, because I've just been living this life for so long. So I think it would be quite strange. But I mean, and there are some amazing people from there, and I did have some great experiences as well. But it just seems such a world. I'm sure it seems that way for you too, Rich. It's like a world
Oh,
away
yes.
from where you are now.
Even when I just was home a couple weeks ago, we lost our aunt died. So I went home, and I just go and get a hotel room. I go visit my dad, sit with him. I interviewed him this time because I figured that's the best thing I can do right now. Interview him, get his story. So I put him on my podcast, made him famous. 83-year-old man on my podcast, talking about his time and everything. But everyone else
That's
is still doing the same things that they always did, and I don't know. It's hard for me to just get involved up there because I'm not there.
Yeah. No, I totally understand where you're coming from. It's tough for me too, and like I said, I'm grateful that I have my friend Mary McNeil, another friend named Karen, a couple others, Tara and her sister Sherry. So there's a few that I still keep in touch with, or that I would try to visit if I ever went back. But my husband's from Washington State, and so what we'll probably wind up doing is, once I retire, not necessarily move there, but maybe live there part time, especially in the summertime where it's warm, and then find another home in southern South in the Florida area where values and uh, weather align for us. So that's kind of the plan.
And we have one of the audience chimed in here. Theresa, thank you for all you do, and thanks for telling your story. Small world. My wife is from just down the road from you in Lancaster, Ohio. That's Jake Holland, our resident redneck here on the Misfit Nation.
That's awesome. Well, Lancaster is actually where my cousin Rita is from, and a few of my relatives on my mom's side. So I would grow up, I'd actually go to Lancaster quite a bit to visit. So yeah, not far at all.
So that is small world.
It
Thanks,
is.
Jake.
It really is.
So, Theresa, if you can talk to young Theresa now and you should join the military and this is why, what would you say?
Well, I would say that for me, it was the best decision I've ever made, other than marrying my husband, in my entire life. I didn't know it at the time.
Right.
And I didn't realize, like, oh, I'm going to be a part of these amazing teams. I'm going to get leadership experience. I'm going to learn a trade. But I think that the military exposes you to so many things that aren't great either. Like, but that's good. Like, I think sometimes we think we want things easy, but if things are easy, then there's no struggle. And if there's no struggle, then we don't learn, and then we don't get resilient. And so, I think that the military is going to do all those things for a young person. It's going to build character, because you're going to have toxic leaders, and you're going to have crazy ass coworkers that you got to deal with. And you're going to have unexpected deployments that, or whatever, that you're going to deal with shit that's not very pleasant. And I don't want to sugarcoat that, because joining the military is hard. But at the same time, you're going to make amazing friends. You're going to learn you're going to have great mentors. You're going to have opportunities to try all these different jobs. And you have to be valuable. Like, you can't just go into a job and just expect it to be handed to you. You have to figure out, how to make an impression using your work ethic, using the skills that they teach you. You got to make sacrifices for the team. I mean, like right now at my office, we all want to work from home. It's great, but I constantly have to remind myself and my team that this is something we all have to take turns doing, because at the end of the day, someone's stuck in the office for all the stuff that the front office wants. And so I always say that we've got it, but we can do it. We're going to make it work, because we want it to work, and we want the whole team to enjoy that benefit. So this is the same kind of thing. Like, I'm learning all these like ways in which and I didn't play sports growing up. I always noticed people who are athletes seem to have an easier time in life. And I don't know if musicians are the same way, or people that are in drama club. I don't know if that's the same kind of team kind of mentality, but for some reason, athletes, they just seem to do so well. And I was not an athlete growing up. And I would say I regret that a little bit, because there's something about already understanding those kinds of sacrifices and ways to be a good team player. So you learn all those things in the military. So I say join, even with this, crappy retention and crappy recruiting and all the issues, because be the change. That's how I see it. Like, I'm going to stay in the Navy as long as the Navy needs me, and as long as I'm having a fulfilling career. And I'm going to keep calling out the things that I see that we need to fix. And I'm going to keep praising and celebrating the things we do right, because I'm in it, and I'm part of the change. And I'm not going to sit on the sidelines and throw stones.
Awesome. So listen to that, audience. If you have I guess teenagers or college students right now thinking about their next steps, military is a great option. You just got to learn to put the work in and and be a member of a team. It's bigger than you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is a sacrifice. But I think that everything that you have that you've earned and you're proud of is, and I think the other thing is to learn what you're good at and learn what you gravitate towards, and try to find something in the military that matches your proclivities. Like there's guys on my staff, for an example, that love to wax on about geopolitics. Like our intel officer is really good at it. Our political affairs advisor is really good at it. Now I've realized our information operations guy is great at it. I am not that person. I am not going to stand up at a briefing and tell you what China's doing or tell you what the Ukrainian media is saying. I'm really not. But am I going to be the one that's going to plan a damn good exercise? Yes, I am. Am I going to be the one that's going to work with the media and get all the cool visuals and show and tell a great story about what we're doing and why we do it? Yes, I am. Will be that person. So I think it's learning to like what you gravitate towards and what you would be doing even if you weren't being paid for it.
Awesome. Theresa, how does someone get in contact with you like I did to either talk to you like we are now or maybe get on your show or just learn from you how to be a writer?
I would say they can reach out to me on LinkedIn. That's probably the biggest platform where it's the easiest to get in touch with me. But I have an Instagram page as well. And I have a little Beacons, like a mobile briefcase where you can go on to any of my links. I'm always looking for guest ideas. I'm always backed up with guests, as I'm sure you are, but I do my best to try to put people on that I can and where and when I can. And then as far as like how to be a good writer, I always say too, I'm not a long form writer. I like short stories. I like doing posts. I've done some editorials and I've written some longer articles, but people tell me all the time, "Oh, Theresa, you got to write a book." And I'm like, "Oh, that just sounds like so hard. I'd have to have a coach and I'd have to have it'd be like going to the gym or having a personal trainer because I'd have to like write all the time and I'd have to work on my grammar and and it's so interesting because like as I get older, I just don't give a shit. I don't care anymore. Like I used to be like, "Oh God, I'm not the best writer. No one's ever gonna like," and now I don't care. I'm happy with the way I write. I'm happy with the way I express myself online. So I would say that you just got to be yourself, be who you are. And if you don't have to be Shakespeare to put out a story. You can literally put together 3 paragraphs on a social media post with a nice picture, and that tells a story. So being a storyteller is not, I wrote a book. Being a storyteller is, I captured this amazing content, this video, I just took my phone and went like this and oh my God, it's so gorgeous. And then I'm talking about how that experience made me feel and how it inspired me. That's a story.
Definitely. And I love that. I mean, I just published my second book, September 11th, it came out, but I didn't write every day. It took me years and years to finish this book. I kept having ideas and I'd write a little bit and come back to it, write a little bit, come back to it. So each chapter, basically one story at a time. And I would just erase stuff. I'm not the perfect writer at all, but I got it out. Thank God.
That's awesome. Congratulations. Like I say, I definitely want to do it someday. I just haven't done it yet.
It was a fun journey, and I'm glad that baby's out now. So I'm going to work on my PhD a little more now.
That's awesome. What's your PhD going to be in?
Homeland Security.
Okay. Very nice.
I figured I'd try something obscure and do that. So Theresa, this has been awesome. I know it's getting late where you are. We have the rest of the day here in the States to hang out and do our job. I guess we have to go back to that. But thank you for coming on and hanging out with the Misfit Nation for the last almost 50 minutes. This has been awesome.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to come on the show. And thank you so much for considering having me on. And it's been a pleasure talking to you, Rich.
So you have a good night.
All right. Take care now.
This is a message from the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. Got a question about your VA benefits, healthcare, or eligibility? Go to va.gov, where you can access a new interactive chatbot to ask questions 24/7. One can still browse va.gov for information, but you can now ask specific questions to the chatbot, like what's the PACT Act? How do I apply for disability benefits? What's my claim status? You can access the new feature through va.gov's Contact Us page. Then click on the Start Chat button. The chatbot will continue to improve veterans' access to information about the benefits and services they've earned. This is one way VA is offering seamless and secure access to its online resources.
Thanks for checking us out and being a part of the Misfit Nation. Don't forget to visit our website at themisfitnation.com. That's themisfitnation.com. Check out all of our past episodes and get some of that great Misfit Nation gear. As always, be humble, stay hungry, and keep hustling, because we are Misfit Nation. Misfit Nation. Misfit Nation. Misfit Nation.